This week on NintenDomain, we talk about the launch of the Game Boy Advance and all the launch titles that it had.
You can put the Super Nintendo in your pocket.
It's on the go. Welcome to NintenDomain, episode 51, first episode out of the year 2017. Yay, we're back. Happy New Year, folks.
Happy New Year, guys.
We are your hosts.
Gals.
We are your hosts. I'm Trey Johnson, and
I'm Jeremy, no backlight Mikowski.
Yeah, no backlight. Did you know that apparently you could have taken that apart and put a light in there? Or you can buy one now?
Yeah.
That wasn't available at launch, was it?
It wasn't at launch, but there was a kit that came out. It's called the Afterburner.
Yeah, the Afterburner.
It was before the SP came out. Afterburner was, I think, if I remember correctly, you still had to send in your device to have it installed. I don't think it came as a DIY kit, but I might be wrong. There are kits now, aftermarket kits.
Yeah, but we'll get to that later. That's part of our topic. But let's do news. I don't think there's a whole lot of news, but let's talk anyway. It's been a couple weeks. We missed last week because of the holiday. But how was your Christmas?
Christmas was good. Mostly just hanging out with family and bouncing between locations. Didn't really do anything too crazy for Christmas with video games other than bought some stuff on Steam for my PC, which is not Nintendo.
Now, what did you get for Steam?
Well, I finally grabbed a copy of Final Fantasy X. I've never played that game. I've always wanted to play it. And the last Final Fantasy I played all the way through was 9, so it makes sense to play 10.
Yeah, I also bought a Final Fantasy. I bought Final Fantasy 15. And I bought myself a PlayStation 4 also as a non-Nintendo thing. But I think it's something we should talk about anyway because I feel like it would be a really missed opportunity if Final Fantasy 15 is not a launch title for the Switch. I mean, maybe it's not powerful enough, but I would like to, there's games that were originally on Nintendo that I think should be back with Nintendo, and Final Fantasy is one of those in particular. Especially since this new game is actually pretty good. Like, I've been enjoying a lot of it. And it reminds me a lot of a little game that we talked about called Xenoblade Chronicles. So, it's been pretty cool.
I like hearing you say that because that's what I've heard. I've heard that it's got some similar elements to it that Xenoblade had.
It does, except Xenoblade, moves a lot better. Like, the characters move much better. Like, the characters are incredibly sluggish and slow in this one, in Final Fantasy, which is kind of annoying. Like, I feel like it takes me forever to run from one place to another. Which maybe they were trying to do that to make it feel more realistic, but at the same time it can be kind of annoying when you're going from one area to another. But and so I like the way you traverse better on Xenoblade. And I was under the impression that you could turn your car into a flying car while you're playing it. But I guess that you only get that after you beat the game. That was something I was kind of looking forward to. Like the Skells, where at a point you get to go farther, but it's not like that. And one thing, this is kind of a spoiler, sort of. I mean, I haven't been looking enough into spoiler stuff because I'm not there yet. But apparently halfway through the game, the open world aspect disappears for some reason. So I'm not really looking forward to that. So we'll see.
Oh wait, so it's the opposite of the open world.
Yeah, it does the other thing. Instead of the open world getting bigger and more parts to it, it basically disappears. Is what happens from what I've read. So yeah, because I like the open world stuff a lot, but it'd be a shame when it goes away. But it does go away halfway through. And apparently in Chapter 13, they thought it'd be funny to turn Chapter 13 into a level looking like it was from Final Fantasy 13. And there's a level that's a hallway that you walk down, which is incredibly not fun, from what I've heard. So
it's really self-referential,
yeah,
deprecatory, self-deprecatory or whatever.
I guess apparently that chapter has been critically panned by everyone, and apparently there's an update that they're going to do to try to fix it or something like that. But yeah, so far I like the game aside from all that other stuff that I've read about, which I haven't even gotten to yet. I've played it for 10 hours, and I've just been running around doing side quests and stuff. But I enjoy it.
I don't think I knew you were getting a PS4. I knew you got the game, but...
Yeah, I got the game, and my roommate has been gone for a while, and he took his PS4 with him, so I had no way to play it, so I just went ahead and bought one. Because I was planning on getting one eventually anyway. And I was
What was your cost? if you don't mind my asking?
I got it for $250, and it came with a game, and it came with a $25 gift card, so it's not that bad.
Not bad at all.
I felt like
so you bought it new?
Yeah, I got it new. And it's the small version. It's the slim, so it's really tiny. It's like about this big.
The 500 gig version?
Yeah, it's a 500 gig, and they're already pretty much gone. And all I did was install the games that I had. I already own 6 games for the system, so it's made sense to go ahead and get one. Cause I've been like using Conan's and sharing info and stuff on there was kind of difficult, so it was better to just get my own. But was
it pretty easy to transfer your shit over?
Anything that I did, I guess, under my account name transferred over, but I think the only thing I did with that was like Mortal Kombat. It was like Mortal Kombat 10, so that's the only thing that transferred over. But I don't really, I didn't really play on it that much. Like
did you play Metal Gear Solid? No. Whatever the latest one was?
No, I never played that game.
But you're gonna do that now?
Maybe. I probably will eventually, but I've just been playing Final Fantasy. But yeah, it's cool. I like that you can buy soundtracks from previous Final Fantasy games and you can listen to them in your car while you're getting driven around. I haven't gotten to the point where I can drive yet, which is weird. They won't let me drive at night. And when I drive at night, there's monsters and stuff that destroy the car, so I don't really do that. But yeah, it's cool. I've been enjoying it. There's a lot of references to older Final Fantasy games, and I would really like to see it on the Switch next week when they do the Switch presentation. One can only hope, right? But
so close, man.
But that should be something that should be on there. But yeah, that was my non-Nintendo news. As far as like...
It's 1 week from today.
Yeah, it is. That's why this week we're doing the Game Boy Advance release, because I wanted to talk about a different lineup, since by next week we'll know what the lineup is for Switch and what the price is and all that. And we'll do some predictions too before we get into that. But let's finish off with our news stuff first.
Right.
I also got a stuffed Rowlet from my girlfriend for Christmas, which is pretty awesome as far as like game related toys. A Rowlet is the leaf starter from the grass starter from Pokemon. For those of you who didn't play Sun and Moon, it's that super cute owl with the little bow tie. She bought me a little stuffed animal that's like this big.
That also looks like the top of a bikini.
Yeah, well, in the stuffed animal, it looks more like a bow tie because it sticks out because it's 3D. It comes out from the body. But yeah, it's really cute. Super cute. And I got her a 3DS for Christmas, which I think I didn't, yeah. No, we did. I didn't say it on the show last week because I didn't want to give it away. But I got her a 3DS and I got my niece a Gamecube with Paper Mario for Christmas, and she really liked that. Got it for her to take to college because she's 18 now, so thought that she should have a system that I had in college to play. And she was pretty excited about it, so that's cool.
Hell yeah, man. And you could buy her GameCube games for future gifts.
Yeah, because a lot of them cost more than the GameCube. I was surprised that this one came with Paper Mario. That actually really helped because...
Maybe get her a waiver. That'd be a good idea.
In my budget, I couldn't afford getting a GameCube and a game, but I found one. I won an auction on eBay for this one, which was like $25 plus like $18 shipping, but it came with Paper Mario and a controller and all the cords and all that. You find a lot of GameCubes on eBay that are just the box. There's not any in the cords with it, so this was good that way. But yeah, what have you bought aside from your Steam stuff, or have you gotten anything else?
Aside from my Steam stuff, no, I haven't really. I've just been trying to like consolidate all my collections and figure out what I actually have and have a plan of attack for playing games, because I keep downloading games and I keep buying games, but I'm not really playing them.
Oh yeah. Point. Yeah, you have to like strategize or keep a notebook saying like, this is the one that I've done here. I need to finish this one. I try to just keep it in my mind, I guess, because I'm still working on not Final Fantasy. I'm still working on Dragon Quest VII, and Dragon Quest VIII is actually right around the corner. I put down a reservation for one when I picked up the PlayStation 4, because Dragon Quest VIII comes out like a week after the Switch presentation. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in the episode following our Switch episode, which will be next week.
Our Switch episode's going to be baller.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, I hope so. You were telling me that you have to work during the event, unfortunately, so you have to watch it. You guys will have to take breaks and watch it on your phones, or?
I think I'll be able to watch it because it starts at 10, and that's when I'm done with work, so I can have it playing while I close down.
Oh, okay.
That's actually fine.
Yeah, and it's like
so I think
live.
I'll be able to watch it. I won't be able to have my eyes glued to the screen, but I'll be able to like watch it and then go home, watch it again.
Yeah.
I won't be too far behind what's happening.
It's like a presentation where like,
but I really do wish I could have like, I wish I could have a bucket of popcorn and if it's a presentation, then it may very well be going on still when I get home and I can just keep watching it. Yeah.
Do you think it's going to go on like all day? I mean, it's night here because it's Japan time, but I'm wondering about that. Like, since it's like a live presentation, is it like E3? Is it going to be like a 10-hour thing? Like, will we be?
I think it's going to be 3 or 4 hours is what I kind of gathered from all the rumors.
Sure. Well, I figured we'd record late whenever it's done and, give our impressions and all that. What do you think, I guess we could just jump right into it. Do you have any predictions on what they're going to say in the Switch thing next week? We can make predictions right here.
All right. Predictions. GameCube Virtual Console. I'm confident of that.
Yeah, I think that one's probably going to be a thing. What the real question is, though, are you going to have to buy different Joy-Cons to play it? Or are the analog triggers going to be on there? That's what I want to know.
Well, you know what? That's a good question because it would be kind of cool if they announced GameCube functionality in the Virtual Console. And then they were like, also, you can get the GameCube joysticks because Melee.
Yeah.
They're going to have Smash Brothers Melee on the Switch, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that everybody wants to use the GameCube controller in Brawl because Melee was so good or not. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, people like the GameCube controller for Melee. I believe the GameCube controller was developed particularly for the GameCube. But I think that the GameCube controller was developed for Super Smash Bros. Melee in particular, so that would make sense if they end up putting that on there for Virtual Console. But I was thinking more having the analogs for Super Mario Sunshine, if that ends up being a Virtual Console thing, which I'm sure it will, because, why wouldn't they?
So you think there might be a Joy-Con that has the double-clicky digital triggers, or whatever they call them?
Yeah, I think it would have to. It would have to play Super Mario Sunshine. So maybe it already has that on there, or it has an attachment that will do that. It wouldn't surprise me. Like when you remember when the Wii came out, it's like you can't play Super Nintendo games unless you get the classic controller. So they can do that again if that's what they're.
Which was true. It was really hard to play SNES games with the.
Well, it wouldn't
even with the.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't even let you do it. Like it would say you need a classic controller to do this. Like so you had to have it for it to play it.
Well, you could try to play with a GameCube controller.
Oh well, yeah.
The way the buttons were laid out did not work well for the SNES Virtual Console.
It didn't work well for stuff like F-Zero or anything where you had to hold Y and hit B because they weren't next to each other. So it kind of it would mess up playing Donkey Kong or Smash Brothers or Super Mario World or any of those games wouldn't really work with it.
Yeah, Mario World.
But yeah, you couldn't play it with a Wiimote. You couldn't use just the Wiimote to play a Super Nintendo game. It wouldn't let you do that. So you had to
just straight up NES or Genesis.
Yeah, you could play Genesis with it because Genesis had 3 buttons. But that was hard to do also because you had to kind of hit the A on the way on the side by the control pad. But yeah, I expect to see some GameCube stuff on there. That's what people keep talking about. And Laura Kate Dale, she did that whole Ask Me Anything thing, in between our last 2 episodes, and talked about a bunch of shit on that. Talked about how the Virtual Console will be, not exactly as big as you expect it to be, but there'll be some whatever's on there. And there
was really only one time the Virtual Console impressed people, and that was when it was first announced on the Wii. And then, those first few months, as things trickled out, people were thinking, even back then, why aren't they releasing more stuff? Why aren't we getting more of this system's games or that system's games? So I think no matter what, the Virtual Console is going to be disappointing. I think that's just the nature of the beast. There's a whole lot going on behind the scenes for those games to be ported in the first place.
Yeah.
And the consumer doesn't care about that. They just want the games. So I think it was fair even before LKD, whatever her name is, before she even said anything, I knew. I think we all knew we were going to be disappointed by the Virtual Console.
Yeah. Well,
there's no way it's going to be the orgy of awesome games we hope it would be. It's available from day one, or I really don't foresee current games transferring directly. I think there will still be a fee to upgrade or whatever, like there was with the Wii U over the Wii.
Yeah, I expect that. I expect there to be an upgrade price for sure. But yeah, like you were saying, they have to redo everything to make it play correctly on whatever the Switch is. So unless the Switch is using the same stuff that the Wii U's using to emulate it or whatever, they wouldn't be able to add everything up there from the beginning. So it's fine with the trickle down as long as they just don't give up on it and just keep doing it every week like they have been for the Wii U. We got Mario Kart 64 finally on that last week, so that's cool.
Guess what we're getting tomorrow?
Well, I don't know. What are we getting tomorrow?
Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, Pokemon Snap. That's a cool game. I like that game.
It's finally happening.
Yeah, it's finally snapping in, as some people say.
And as far as I know, you're not going to be able to use your Wii U gamepad as the camera, unfortunately. That'd be awesome.
You can't, and you probably can't take it to Blockbuster to print out your photos like you used to. Oh wait, they don't exist anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, you have to take it to Redbox.
Yeah. They have printers at Redboxes. They might. But yeah.
No, it just sends you a digital copy to your smartphone.
Oh yeah. For sure. They should have, yeah, they could have like incorporated that in there somewhere.
Well, you can take screenshots through Miiverse.
You could do that.
And you can pull that stuff up on your phone. I've done it before.
Something weird that I noticed, speaking of Miiverse, something weird I noticed about Pokemon Sun and Moon is that you can't post to Miiverse with that game.
I didn't know that.
I mean, you can post, but you can't post pictures. You can't like post screenshots of the game. You can say like, hey, this game is cool and just type it in, but you can't put any pictures from the game on there, which is like,
that's weird.
Yeah, I wonder if Mario, Super Mario Maker's like that too, which I ended up getting that in between our past two episodes, and I played that a lot. It's really fun. The levels are really hard, but it's a lot of fun. I forgot to mention that I got that.
We will eventually have an interim episode released as a bonus later, because I'm still editing it.
I didn't mention that one because I wasn't sure if it was going to see the light of day or not.
I'm about halfway through it.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll call that episode 50A then, since this is episode 51. Since we said that at the top of the show. So be on the lookout for that one. There was also a rumor. Well, this is like a rumor about when there's any sort of Nintendo announcement about anything ever. Somebody was like, "Oh, I heard that Mother 3 is going to be on the Switch." It's like, oh, okay.
Of course.
Yeah, but like every time there's any sort of like announcement about anything is like, "Oh yeah, Mother 3." Like, okay. Maybe Mother herself will come out and present it at the live presentation, which we mentioned in one of our previous episodes about, we see this Mother person. That's kind of like, yeah, of course, yeah, sure, rumor, Mother 3. I mean, if it's gonna be on anything, it'll probably be on that, right? Because that's the newest thing, so maybe.
Well, I mean, that would be even less surprising than when they released Earthbound Origins, is that what it was called?
Earthbound Beginnings.
Beginnings, sorry. When they released Beginnings, like, that was truly surprising. Like, Mother 3, as much as it's been canceled, I don't know. I guess it would be equally surprising. But still, from the ground up, a new Earthbound game, $5.
Yeah, Mother 3, people think it'll be on there. Maybe, hopefully. That'd be great. What about games? Like, how many games do you think will be at launch? Like, I'm pretty sure Skyrim will be on there as a launch game. The Mario game probably be a launch game.
Really?
The one that Karen
played.
There's
going to be a new Mario game?
That's what I think, yeah. Because I don't think that Zelda will be a launch game. I'm feeling the delay on that one. I think it's going to get delayed. I think it might not come out till like June. I don't know. I'm feeling a Zelda delay on that. I'm thinking that maybe Mario will be a launch, maybe not. I don't know. How many games do you think they're going to have at launch for this? Take a guess.
5.
5?
Mm-hmm.
That's a small amount. I don't know how many the Wii U actually had.
Virtual Console. I'm not counting like indie games. I'm not counting any of that. I'm just saying 5 like
straight up. I'm saying straight up like cartridges
AAA titles or whatever.
Yeah. Like straight up cartridges that you would buy like with boxes. You know, like,
I'd say 5.
There'll be Arkham Knight Switch Edition will be on there, right? Batman Arkham Knight Switch Edition. That's from whenever. There'll be Skyrim on there. Maybe that basketball game that they saw on the video, maybe that'll be in there. 2K whatever, 2K17, something like that.
I'm going to say I don't think there's going to be a Mario game. If there is, it's not going to be like a 3D one. It's going to be another new Mario game.
Oh, really?
No, they wouldn't do that, though, would they?
We haven't seen any footage of that, though. That would be like Wii U all over again. I'm thinking new 3D Mario.
That footage in the commercial looks so corny. I just don't believe like there's a Mario game ready to rock.
Yeah. That would be awesome if there was, though.
Unless it was like an HD remake of Mario Galaxy, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be cool, but I don't know.
Like the Mario Galaxy HD collection or something.
Yeah, for sure. Well, our Mario Galaxy HD collection would be really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe all of them will be rehashes for the most part, like Mario Kart 8, I'm sure.
I think Skyrim will happen.
Splatoon. I mean, Skyrim seems like something that would be a launch, right? The launch title, I think.
Final Fantasy 15 would blow my mind.
Is
that even out for the Xbone? Or is it only out for PS4 right now?
No, I think it's out for both systems. I mean, I think they both came out at the same time.
It's not out for PC.
No.
I know that much.
Yeah. Is it supposed to come out for PC? I mean, it probably will eventually.
Has not been confirmed.
Yeah, it would be, I mean, it would make sense for it to be on there. That's what Nintendo should be looking for, is trying to get the games that have come out to be on there. You know, like Dragon Quest Builders and like Doom and Final Fantasy or like Dishonored, like whatever games just came out for these systems, it should be on Switch too. If they can handle, I don't know all the details on the specs and all that, but I would hope that it could handle.
We will know next episode.
PS4 and Xbox One games. Yeah, we will. We will know next episode.
We're gonna have a lot of questions answered next episode.
What do you think? What do you think on the? Do you think they're gonna go up for reservation like during the presentation? I know I mentioned that before. Like, because they did it before in other, like, directs where they're like, oh yeah, where they did it for, like, the Majora's Mask 3DS. They're like, oh, it's available right now. And then it sold out in, like, 2 seconds, pretty much.
Well, supposedly it's up for pre-order at some GameStops already.
Even though they don't...
Not in the U.S.
I was going to say, even though they don't have a price or, like, a date or anything.
Right.
What do you think about date for it? I'm just going to check. I got to see when Mar 10 is, because that's when I think it should come out. But I know Nintendo, they release everything on Fridays. Oh, wait. Mar 10 is a Friday. I'm calling it. Mario Day.
Mar 10 would be amazing.
Mario Day, Mar 10. That's when it's coming out. We're calling it right here.
Man?
Mar 10.
I'm going to hop on there with you, man. Mar 10.
Mar 10 all the way, man. NintenDomain, hashtag Mar 10.
That would have to be a Mario game, for sure.
Yeah, that would be awesome if they incorporated Mario Day in there and actually released a game with it. And that could be their release date for this new Mario game and Sunshine and Galaxy HD and whatever else shit they want to give you on it.
I do see a day one Game Boy. I see a day one GameCube VC. I don't know if it's going to be a remake, but there's going to be something GameCube, like, Blue Storm or something?
Wave Race?
I don't know.
Wave Race Blue Storm, day one. Virtual Console. That'd be cool. I guess we'll have to wait till next week, but I thought we could do just a little bit of predictions there.
We got some good predictions here.
I'm wondering how the whole...
I think that the Virtual Console stuff's going to cover a wide array. Like, I think we'll get several Virtual Console games, but just like one for each. I don't think it'll be like a huge smattering of VC releases.
Oh, so you're saying like there'll be one NES game and like one Super Nintendo game, one GameCube game and like one TurboGrafx
maybe all the Mario
16 game, and
maybe
one Commodore 64 game. Yeah, that'd be nice, I guess. I don't know. I figured they would just do one thing, or I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm wondering how the whole presentation is going to work, like how they're going to divide it, or like is there going to be a speaking part, or is there going to be a demo part? Like, I'm interested to see how it's all going to come together, because I guess people are going to actually go to it. Like, there'll be people there, people from review places will probably be there. I'm sure like IGN will be there and all that watching it. So it's cool that it's like an actual event.
One more prediction. I think updated Miiverse, of course. Yeah. I think a more lightning quick Miiverse with video sharing built in. Not just like proprietary to the games, but like you can share whatever that you play on your Switch through the Miiverse.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd be totally into that, because apparently there's those like 2 buttons on there that we're not really sure what they do on the Switch controller. People have said that maybe one of them's a share button. But yeah, I like Miiverse a lot, and I would like to see it come back and yes, be much, much quicker, and have you be able to go like back and forth between one and the other. It'd be nice to have some sort of
instant message, like your friends, like instantly.
Yeah. It should have some sort of suspend mode too, which I'm sure it does. I mean, I know it does from like switching from the dock and not, but like from playing the PS4, like I can basically hit the PlayStation button and go to rest mode, and the PS4 will like shut off pretty much, and I can turn it back on, and then I'll go right back to where I was on Final Fantasy 15 with no loading whatsoever. Pretty awesome. I like them having that type of thing in there. So do you want to take a quick break and get to the topic then, now that we've done our predictions?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some good predictions.
For sure. Do you have any more predictions before we go to the break?
I think that, I do, back to what you said before, I think pre-order will be announced. I don't know if it'll happen immediately, like during the presentation, but I think they're going to gauge their hardware production on pre-orders, which is a smart thing, and I wish they would always do that.
So they'll actually have enough they should actually have enough to give to the people that pre-order. But I'm afraid that the pre-orders are gonna like stop at a certain spot. I saw something online, somebody saying like, on the NBC group saying like, I'm gonna camp out in my car, like in front of the GameStop so I can go there like the day after when they open and go get a reservation, thinking that it's gonna, that you're gonna be able to do it. Which may be. I mean, it's only like 2 months away from the presentation, so I don't know. We'll see.
If the NES Classic taught us anything, you gotta be on the ball for that shit.
Yeah, you gotta be on the ball. You gotta start, our friend of the show, John Knitter, he, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but he sat in front of Best Buy for like 3 days waiting for the Wii to come out because he wanted to be first in line for it. And I thought that sounded like a crazy thing at the time, and I was like, you don't have to do that. But now we're in the world in the future where you actually do have to do that. We may have to camp out for like 3 days to actually get a Switch, which is crazy. And he didn't have one reserved. He just waited in front of Best Buy for like 3 days to just walk in and get a Wii. But he got one, so it happened. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about the Game Boy Advance launch and its titles. Stay tuned. So, it was actually almost 15 years ago. It was, 2001 when the Game Boy Advance launched. A couple months before the, Gamecube came around. It was, what was it, last June 2016 would have been the 15-year anniversary of the Game Boy Advance. I guess we could have done it then. But we decided to do it now because of the Switch launch being around the corner next week. So this week we're going to talk about, Game Boy Advance and their launch lineup, which from what I could tell is the largest amount of games Nintendo has had as a launch lineup. They had like 17 games, which is amazing.
Yeah, they were ready for this. And that's crazy to think because the Game Boy Color was just a couple years before that.
When was the Game Boy Color? I feel like it was
3 years before.
Yeah. But I was like I thought I was still in high school when the Game Boy Color came around. Wasn't it like 97? Something like that, I feel like.
I thought the Game Boy Color came out in 98.
Oh, maybe it was 98. It could have been like early 98 because I
Pokemon
graduated
came
in the
out
summer
in 96 and then Pokemon Yellow came out in 98, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it could have been like earlier 98, I guess. Because I felt like I got that it was out while I was still in high school. But I mean, that's still a good amount of time. If it came out in 98, that's like 3 years. I mean, the Game Boy Color was just like, it was just an addition to the Game Boy. It wasn't like a whole new system, you know, where the Game Boy Advance was a whole new system.
Yeah, there were some exclusives, but it was a very backwards compatible thing. It was, like you said, just an incremental increase of what they already had.
Yeah, it basically looked the same. It just, this one had more color, you know. Where the Game Boy Advance was like different graphics and much better looking graphics. But the Game Boy, I was looking at the Game Boy Advance launch lineup and they had 17 games right out of the gate, which is what I said before. Let me read them off to you real quick. I managed to play all of them before we recorded this episode, so I'll be able to say a little bit about each thing. Some of them I played for longer than others because some of them are kind of throwaway, but some of them I actually found some games that I really, really liked in there. But here's the list in alphabetical order. Rayman Advance, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Chu Chu Rocket, Earthworm Jim, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Fire Pro Wrestling, GT Advanced Championship Racing, Iridion 3D, Konami Crazy Racers, Namco Museum, Pinobee, Wings of Adventure, Pitfall, The Mayan Adventure, Rayman Advance, Ready to Rumble, Boxing Round 2, Super Dodgeball, Super Mario Advance, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. It's quite a list. Which, I remember showing my Game Boy Advance to you, like, that summer. Cause, after we went to Warped Tour, we, like, went out to eat somewhere, and I remember showing you that I had one. We're like, here's Castlevania Circle of the Moon. I can't tell what's going on in it, but it looks cool, you know. So,
that game was really hard to see.
Yeah, well,
it was so much fun.
Is there any sort of particular order that you want to go in for going through the games? I would just, I remember getting my Game Boy Advance around the time that it came out. I remember showing it to you, like right after we went to Warped Tour. When did you pick yours up? Do you remember?
I got mine it would have been my sophomore year of college, so it would have been 2002. Right?
Okay.
No, it would have been fall of 2001 when I got mine. So not long after the launch.
Yeah, because it came out in the summer.
Yeah, I bought it off of you know what I want to say? Okay, it was spring of 2002. I know that because I had some friends that came to school for the second semester, and one of my friends that I met, Brandon, had a Game Boy Advance, and he was like, I don't really like this. I'm going to sell it. And he sold it to me for like, I think $50 or $60. I think it came with Tony Hawk 2 and Golden Sun.
Oh, okay. Do you know how much the Game Boy Advance was when it came out? Did you look that up? Do you remember?
It was $100, right?
I don't remember. I guess I could have looked that up. I just played the games. I didn't actually research anything. You're right. The Game Boy Advance was released in 2001 for $99.99 USD.
That's what I thought.
Which they say is $123, like with inflation nowadays. But yeah, it was $99.99. You're correct. So yeah, the Game Boy Advance came out for $100, and you bought it for, what did you get it for from that guy?
I'm pretty sure I paid about $60 for 2 games.
So that's a good deal. I was going to ask you what your first 2 games were, or which games you got from that launch lineup. Was that the only game that you got from that launch lineup off the front? Was Tony Hawk 2?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember the first 2 games that I got for it were Castlevania Circle of the Moon and Tony Hawk 2. So those were my launch lineup games. I bought F-Zero Maximum Velocity way farther down the road when it was cheaper. But I did have, I ended up owning a few of those. I had Fire Pro Wrestling, which that was a thing. I remember John and I went to a GameStop and we found it there for $5. And he's like, dude, it's only $5. You should get it. So he kind of pushed me into getting it. So I got it. I don't know where that copy of it is that I had. I couldn't find it for this, unfortunately, so I had to play it through an emulator. But there was I also had Tony Hawk 2 at one point. I lost that one. I bought it again for $250 from a used game place. They let me go through their bargain bin, and I found, I was able to find Tony Hawk, Pitfall, Rayman, and Namco Museum in there for about I don't know, for a little over $10 probably for all those. So it wasn't that bad.
Very nice, man.
So I did go out shopping to see however many I could find of these. And I think there's only there's 4 of them available on the Wii U Virtual Console. You can get F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Konami Crazy Racers, Super Mario Advance, and Castlevania Circle of the Moon are the only ones that are available on Virtual Console of those original games.
What was your first Game Boy Advance? What did it look like? Do you remember?
It was it was one of those, the little non-backlit. I think it was purple. It was either pink or purple. I think those were the colors that were out.
I had the pinkish purple one.
I don't remember where. I sold it. I traded it in to get a Game Boy Advance SP, so I don't have it anymore. But I do.
I do actually own one of the purple translucent ones. It's not the same one I had, but it's the same color I had. So that was also one of the reasons when he sold it to me. I remember he was like, "Man, I didn't really want to buy this pink Game Boy Advance.
Yeah,
it's the only one I could find, so I'm going to sell it to you." And he didn't really care that much, but I was like, "Whatever, it works as a Game Boy Advance." And I did buy Circle of the Moon immediately. I went out and bought that. I think the same day or within a few days.
Oh, sure. So you had Circle of the Moon and Tony Hawk 2 as well. We both had the same launch games. But I also have a Game Boy Advance that I was actually playing. When I was playing these games, I played them through the Game Boy player of the Gamecube, so I could play it on a TV. But I used my purple Game Boy Advance that I have now, which an old roommate left, I used it as a controller to play the game, so I could, feel the way the game would have played on that Game Boy. Except,
nice.
Except I didn't try to take one of the lights and tape it to the back of my head or whatever, so I could actually see the game. I played it off a TV, but I still played it with the Game Boy, so it's cool. I was wondering if I probably could have hooked it up to my computer and played it as a controller on that, because I was playing on the emulator. I was playing those with a GameCube adapter, so I was playing with the GameCube controller, the Game Boy games. So I might have been able to, if the whole contraption, the adapter would have worked on that, I could have played it like that. I didn't even think about it until later. But from going through the games, there were some pretty good games on there that I had missed that I didn't really know about. And believe it or not, there were they had 3 racing games right off the bat there at the beginning. And all of them are pretty decent. Even that GT Advanced Championship game is pretty good.
I watched a video on that, and it looks like
it looks nice for the
PlayStation
time.
Game. It looks like a PlayStation game, a launch PlayStation game, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was
which a lot of these games do look like that because they were 32. It was a 32-bit console.
Yeah. Well, it was it was very Mode 70, like that one was. It was Mode 70 and it had the big sprites on it, So do you want to go through the list of the games then that I have in any particular order? We could start with that one, I guess, since we were just talking about it. With GT,
sure.
With GT Advance. I made all my notes on a fucking pad here, so you will probably hear some of this. So bear with me.
A little bit of clicky, it's okay.
GT Advanced Championship Racing. Now, I enjoyed the game for the most part. One of the major things which I found, and I looked at a lot of old IGN reviews of these games, just because there's probably some stuff that I missed that they said. And apparently that game, in Japan, it had a save battery in it, and when it was released in America, they took the save battery out. So in order for you to keep all of the stats of all the races that you won and all the cars that you won and all that, they give you this 15-digit password that there's like 80,000 of them. It's ridiculous. So that's kind of like a killer for the game. But if you're playing it now on an emulator, that doesn't really matter because you can just save whenever you want. But I was really impressed with the game. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like you can go and unlock all these cars and there's like 50 some races on here. But then, I didn't know because I never turned off the system because I was playing it through an emulator. But if you would have played it on an actual Game Boy, in order to save everything, you had to write down these incredibly long passwords and put that in every time you had to start it up, which really sucks. That kind of
15 years before, in 1986, they did the same thing to Metroid and Kid Icarus.
Oh yeah, where you could save in Japan, but you couldn't save here. Well, that's because they had the disk drive, but there's not really an excuse for this. I guess they just did it because it's cheaper, but it's like a dumb idea. But they said that you could order, at the time, you could order an import version of it, and it's all in English anyway. So it's like, why even bother with the American version and just order a Japanese one? I guess in 2001, importing was a bit more difficult than it is now. But yeah, it was enjoyable. I played through the beginner set of races, and I unlocked a couple cars, and there's a lot of SUV looking cars in there, which are kind of big van looking things, which is weird, but there's some sporty stuff in there too. But yeah, it's cool for what it was.
From the videos I saw, it kind of looks like your sprite. It reminds me of Mario Kart 64. It looks like it's 3D, the actual player model, but it's a bunch of sprites that rotate or that change based on your rotation. And there's basically like an axis that you're moving along, like a spot on the ground that the sprites are on top of. Moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a big sprite that rotates and it's on top of a moving Mode 7 racetrack is basically how it works. The big problem with this game is sometimes because of how the Mode 7 is, it's kind of hard to tell where the track is and where it isn't. Because I have found myself trying to go down a road that I can't go down because the way it separates is kind of hard to tell where it is. So that was kind of a problem that I had with it. But
it does also flash the big arrows at you to warn you where the turns are, right?
Yeah, it tells you where to turn, but sometimes there was a part where I was like, oh, that looks like a shortcut, but I couldn't take it because it was just weirdly marked. Stuff like that. There's parts where the road just ends, with a divider, but the divider doesn't stick out enough for you to know where it is. And you can drive through streetlights, which, if that bothers you, then whatever. It doesn't actually stop the car, you just pass right through it like it's made of air. Which isn't really a complaint. It's kind of cool that it has streetlights in there that has big sprites, but you drive through them and they don't actually have any damage to them. But I did kind of a sort of a rating system in my notes saying whether I thought it was a good buy or not if you would have bought it. And I put yes for this, that I would, if you bought it, you wouldn't have been disappointed with it. Back then, there wasn't really anywhere you could rent Game Boy Advance games, so it was kind of, you just buy it and, you're stuck with it. But if I would have bought that one when the Game Boy came out, I would have been okay with it. It sucks to have to jot down all of those passwords, but I guess that's the way that is. If I would have known, I would try to go for the Japanese import of it. But if you're into more
$30.
Yeah, if you're into more realistic racers, it's totally there. Even though I think that the Konami Crazy Racers is probably the best racing game on there at launch, and probably in total for Game Boy Advance. I ended up really loving that game, and that game I already had on Virtual Console, so I'd already spent some time with. But I just played more of it. And if you want to do a segue, we can go straight to that one after this.
Is that on the Wii U Virtual Console?
It is on the Wii U Virtual Console. And I bought it a while back just because, somebody said oh, that game's really cool. So I got it, but I didn't realize it was a launch game until doing the research for this episode.
It's a hidden gem.
Yeah, it is a hidden gem. It's actually a really good game. And it's some of the, they call them a driver's test. You have to pass a driver's test before you can unlock different race tracks. So basically it's when you start, it's oh, you get the A cup, and you play those, and it's oh, do you want a driver level C or driver level S or whatever? In order to get to those next ones, you have to pass these driver tests. So it's it reminds me very much of the Mario Kart DS missions where you had to go through and do specific things. One of them is you have to win this race, but you're going backwards and everybody else is going the regular way. So you have to beat this time, but not run into anybody while you're trying to do it. Stuff like that. There's little challenges in there. So that's cool. And there's 4 secret characters in there. There's some really bizarre, you can play as Dracula from Castlevania. I guess they didn't want to put one of the Belmonts in a cart, so they had this chibi looking Dracula in there who looks really silly and looks nothing like the Dracula who's in Circle of the Moon, by the way. They look nothing alike whatsoever. But Gomon and Bisumero are in there from Mystical Ninja, and the baseball players from the MLB Konami game is in there. The guys with the big the fat heads. I forget, you can play as the ship from Gradius. Yeah, that's an unlockable character, which I thought was pretty awesome. And you can also play as the big giant Easter Island heads from Gradius that you fight as a boss. There's just like some really bizarre characters in there.
Yeah. I was wondering what the Easter Island heads were from.
Oh yeah, that's from Gradius. That's one of the Gradius bosses. But you can unlock the actual, like I was looking through, it's like, oh, you can unlock a Vic Viper is what it's called. And I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, it's the thing the ship that's in there. And I thought it was maybe the guy who drove the ship and it'd just be, the pilot or whatever, but it's the ship. Like it's just your card, it's just the ship from Gradius. So I thought that was really cool. And there's like a bear tank, which is from Rakuga Kids, which I haven't played. There's a Naomi and King from Poppin' Music, another Konami game I haven't played. You can play as Gray Fox from Metal Gear Solid, which is pretty awesome. Gray Fox is a racer, is interesting. If you play with him, he uses the stealth armor and disappears, like after he wins. But everybody has different animations that they do when they win. Like the bear tank, he like falls asleep when he goes past the thing. And they all do different stuff. I didn't beat anything as Dracula. I wonder what he would do. But yeah, there's, you go through and there's your regular race set, and then there's the license, and there's also like, there's multiplayer stuff, like you could do it with the cable and all that, which is cool. So there's plenty of stuff to do on there. And, it has a killer, intro song too, which I'm just gonna play for a second for you on here. Yeah, there was actual like music with lyrics on Game Boy Advance right out of the gate, which I think is pretty awesome. Like once you get into playing the game for a while, it does get a little annoying on the menu because every time you go to the menu, it's like "My Racer" and it's like pretty loud, but it's enjoyable. I like that. I like that game a lot. That's a definite buy for me. I think that's probably I don't know. I put it up there. Like if I was thinking about making a top 5 or something of launch titles, I'd definitely put that in the 5. I don't know where it'd be, what number it would be, but I would definitely. If I was to go back in time and be able to only buy like 2 games again, I think that would be one that I bought instead of like maybe Tony Hawk, which Tony Hawk is still an okay game, and we can segue to that one after that, since I just talked about it. Tony Hawk 2, that was the first, portable skateboarding game. And it was, I believe it came out post, Tony Hawk 2 on 64, cause it was between, cause it was between that and Tony Hawk 3 for GameCube, cause the GameCube one came out a few months later.
This is one of the first games I remember, like, reading reviews for online. Like, I know there were other games that I read reviews for online, but I really remember the IGN review of this game being like, don't discount it because it's isometric. Don't discount it because it's obviously like cramming something into this hardware that can't really handle the source game. But it's a good game. It translates well. I just remember reading all this and being like, I don't know about that. And that's one of the games you showed me at that IHOP or Denny's or wherever we were.
Oh yeah, because that was the first game I got. That, like I said that in yeah, it was IHOP or Denny's, something like that.
Yeah, I remember, like, you handed me your Game Boy, and I started playing it a little bit, and I'm like, holy shit, this, like, I didn't really understand how isometric could translate to being, like, still a 3D game. It's just a fixed camera angle. And, like, it really was like I was playing Tony Hawk. And I was very impressed by it. It required, like, wrapping your head around the fixed perspective, but it still worked, and the levels were the same that I had played in the PlayStation version. So, yeah, this game impressed the shit out of me that it was it was a portable game.
Yeah, no, it was impressive. Like, it's incredible. I still find it very difficult to get some of the stuff in the isometric view, though. Like, it's hard to, like, go up and get the skate letters and stuff like that. But aside from, if you're okay with playing it like that, it's incredibly smooth. Like, it's like, runs very smoothly, runs very well. Like, everything's really responsive. And I was able to, do the same tricks that I would on a regular Tony Hawk game. So it's pretty cool. The soundtrack's kind of funny because they were unable to put like actual songs on there, like how most Tony Hawk games are known for that. So that was kind of something I missed on it. And I felt like when you're going through and changing the characters, they all kind of look like weird faceless zombies. Like if you look at them. Because they're all very.
But they were fully polygonal.
They were, but they were super low poly, and there's no detail on their face, and like some of the bald guys like kind of look like pinhead zombies, I guess, or like pinhead monsters. Like it looks like their heads like come to a point and all that. And they look kind of frightening, like when you're going through there and looking for your characters.
But still super impressive that a launch title for the Game Boy Advance, like, showed something that the Super Nintendo could not have done, which I don't know if we've really covered it yet, but this was kind of like, I think, unofficially marketed as a pocket Super Nintendo.
Yeah. And well, this, like I said before, this is the very first portable Tony Hawk game. And as I was looking through the bargain bin to find this game, I found like 3 other Game Boy Advance Tony Hawk games in there. I found Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. I found Tony Hawk Underground 1 and Tony Hawk Downhill Jam also on Game Boy Advance. So apparently it sold well because they kept making them. You know, they kept doing them over and over again. So, but yeah, it was cool. It was cool for what it was, you know, and I think I played it about as much as I could. And I tried playing it this time, and I feel like I have more patience for it this time, I think, than I did when I got it when I was like 21. There's also levels from Tony Hawk 1 in it as well, so it's kind of like a mixture of both of them, which I noticed. Like I know, like
sort of a greatest hits.
Yeah, and I know like the warehouse, like the original level is in there, like the one where you come down, and there's some other ones in there too. But I put it down as a goodbye, as something that I, you know, enjoyed and would get again. And I'm glad to have it again. I bought it for $2. Lost my other copy of it somewhere along the way, but it's fun.
It did have battery backup.
Yeah, it had full on save, no passwords, which is good. But I wanted to play one of the music songs just because it's pretty bad. It's like, this is like their version of punk songs on here. I mean, it's not quite the same as the licensed songs from the other Tony Hawk stuff, but at least they got the feeling through. You know, it still feels like a punk song. It wasn't that song in particular, but there's another song in there that sounds a lot like Nazi Punk's Fuck Off. I mean, I don't think it actually is, but the way the song goes, it's like na-na-na, 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 na-na, like it sounds just like that. So I don't know if they were pulling from actual music or they probably just had people writing it. From playing it, it kind of reminded me of Spider-Man Maximum Carnage. It kind of reminded me of of those songs.
I was going to say that reminded me of Maximum Carnage.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that same sort of like, you know, like compressed guitar music from like Super Nintendo. Even though the Game Boy Advance, its sound system was not as powerful as the Super Nintendo. I know that for sure, because if you want to segue to Earthworm Jim on Game Boy Advance, which is another game that I played, the soundtrack on that is not up to par. It's not as good as the Super Nintendo one, especially the sound of the gun. The gun shooting sounds really weird. It doesn't sound like an actual gun, but supposedly it sounds better than the Sega version of Earthworm Jim 1, but you can definitely tell that it's not. You can tell the difference if you're used to playing the Super Nintendo one. The controls definitely weren't as responsive, in my opinion. Did you look at anything on that? Which I thought was really...
what I read about it was that it was kind of panned as being a bad port.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting through the first level, which I've been through the first level multiple times on Earthworm Jim. And also the secret level, or the bonus level that you play in between levels, like, was different. Like, you go through this tunnel in the Super Nintendo one, and you can move, like, up and down on the sides of the tunnel in that, but in this one you're just kind of static, moving up and down on the screen, and the tunnel's just behind you, in front of you, which is, it's hard to explain. It's kind of, if you actually see it, you can see the way it works, but it's strange. And then the second level, I couldn't even get through the second level because I couldn't get stuff that should have, like, I got stuck. Like, stuff that should have worked didn't really work, so I had a hard time playing that one.
So you feel like it was a bad port?
Yeah, it was definitely a bad port. No, what you were saying, for sure. Like I said, the controls seemed sluggish, and the music, you could tell the music was different. It's not as good. And I thought it was a really weird game to port, because at this time, I guess we had just had the Earthworm 64 game, I guess, which I thought nobody bought. So it was kind of a weird, I didn't feel like there was really an audience for Earthworm Jim, you know, like at this time. I mean, this was 2001. I don't know when that game launched, like in the 90s. Like, it'd probably been like almost 10 years since then. And I'm sure they wanted to start with the first one, but they should have just started with Earthworm Jim 2. They should have just released that, because that's the better game, in my opinion. And I don't think that one ever came out in Game Boy Advance. I don't think this one performed as well as I thought it would, but it's a strange game to release as a launch, but it happens, I guess. It was a weird, I was kind of like, when I saw it, I was like, wow, that was on Game Boy Advance. I had completely forgotten about it.
Just another game to prove that they were marketing the Game Boy Advance's SNES
portable Super Nintendo, right? Yeah. And another big thing about Earthworm Jim is there's no save, there's no password system. So you basically have to beat the whole thing in one sitting.
Which there never was, right?
There never was, but because of the nature of handhelds, you should be able to save whenever you want. You should be able to take breaks. In order to this, you can't. And back when it came out, there was no way to charge your system or anything like that. So if you're playing it and you run out of batteries, you're fucked. Because you can't like pause it and change the batteries and turn it back on. So that was kind of, I'm sure I don't know if there's a level select code in there. There might be, but that would help it, I guess. But that's like a code that shouldn't be something that somebody would find, But yeah,
which we didn't really mention, the actual Game Boy Advance took 2 AA batteries.
Yeah, 2 AA batteries.
And I think you got between 6 and 8 hours of battery life out of it. So it was pretty good, but, it could still fail you. And it was hard. It was really hard to see because it was not backlit. And I think a lot of the decisions were made based on cost and battery life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess that might have been a reason that maybe they took the same batteries out of some things. I don't know. Speaking of, this isn't really a segue, because I was talking about having a level select code in it. There was one game that I was playing that did have level select code. Did you happen to look at the game Iridion 3D?
Yeah.
Any of the videos of that? That game looks amazing, but it's incredibly hard.
Really good.
Not very fun to play, but
the draw distance looks terrible.
It looks incredible. Well, I mean, it looks like you're almost like playing against like a full motion video or something. Like I don't know how exactly they do it, but it looks incredible. They look like actual it looks like polygonal, but I don't think it really is. I think it's just like some sort of video or something going. I don't know how they did it, but it looks amazing. And I found a level select code on it, and I put in the code just to look at all the levels in the game and all the bosses, because all the bosses and levels were like really fucking cool looking. So I played through that game for the most part. I couldn't beat the last boss, but I played through most of it so I could see all the stuff in it, because it is like incredibly great eye candy. And it's kind of like a Star Fox game minus like all the fun stuff, because all you can really do is move and shoot. I noticed that there's a couple games in here that are like 1-button games. Like that's a 1-button game. I think Pinobee is a 1-button game too. It's just kind of just like move and hit one button. It's weird, but I guess that's what they were going for. But it does really show you like what the system's capable of.
Well, I think a lot of these launch games were exactly that. They were trying to show how graphically superior this was to the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
Or the Game Boy Standard or the Game Boy Pocket or whatever.
Yeah.
There wasn't much to compare it to besides the Game Gear, which was, even at that point in time, was a joke.
Yeah, well the Game Gear was a little bit more powerful than the Game Boy, right? But I know it had horrible battery life.
Supposedly it was the same level as the Master System, so it was... Yeah, it was
close. So it was kind of like Game Boy Color, probably.
It was closer to the NES, somewhere between the NES and the SNES.
But the Game Boy Color wasn't the Game Boy Color about the same as the NES?
Yeah, it pretty much was like, an NES, a portable NES.
So I mean, then the Game Gear was the same. But yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like I noticed that killing the guys doesn't really do anything for you, aside from them not being around. But they'll drive right past you, or they'll fly right past you. So most of the game, I spent most of the game just hiding and just trying not to get hit, aside from actually destroying characters, because doing that was harder than it should be, So most of the game I was just dodging stuff instead of trying to shoot stuff. So kind of the fun of it was not really there,
It reminds me a little bit of like Tempest.
And there's no...
In the sense that you're like always going down like a corridor, and all your shots are firing towards like a vanishing point. Like everything's kind of like coming at you like a tube. Even when it's not like in a tubular level, and you're above clouds or whatever, it's still like tubular.
Yeah, no, everything feels like the corridor. And there's only, but if you like take a game like Gradius, like, you know, where there's the guys come at you, you destroy like a whole line of bad guys, and then you get a power up. Like, there's nothing like that in there. There's just like maybe 4 or 5 power ups per level, but they don't change. Like, you killing guys doesn't like add more power ups to it or anything like that. So there's no reason to actually kill anybody. So you can just try to hide out in the corner and hope for them to just pass you, which a lot of levels you can. Like, there's some levels that I just made it through by doing that, just by hiding from the other ships, which makes it a boring game. But man, it's pretty to look at though. It looks really cool. And it's one of those games that's just, you know, worth playing once, but I wouldn't recommend buying it, I guess, unless you find it in a bargain.
It's super cheap, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really look anything up, like, price-wise, like on eBay, aside from the ones that I bought in the store. So I don't know what that one's going for. I figured all of them would be pretty cheap. I didn't really look into it. But that one's, yeah. I mean, it'd be a cool thing to show off if you had one on the Game Boy at the time. Be like, hey, look how fucking cool this looks.
Definitely an eye candy type of game that seemed like it didn't have much depth to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what it was. Speaking of a game that's not an eye candy game, Namco Museum. That was kind of a weird game to be as a launch game. And it only has like, this one I probably played for a total of like 20 minutes before I turned it off. But I wanted to play it just so I could play everything. There's only like 5 games on it. It's like Miss Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Pole Position, Galaga, and Galaxian. And Galaxian's like a really, really slow version of Galaga. With a ship that kind of looks like a Y-Wing meets the Star Trek Enterprise. But yeah, I played all of those games once. I played Pole Position a couple times. It has some weird physics on the turning on that, but I guess they did that for anybody who wanted to have portable arcade stuff with them. I just expected for it to have more games in it than just 5.
Right, but the cartridge size might have limited that. You know what? Probably not.
Sure. But I guess that was the thing. They're like, oh, well now, yeah, so now that you have this portable Super Nintendo, Namco can release like their first of like 30 Namco museums. I feel like there's been like hundreds of those that came after that. And there might have even been some before that too. But yeah, they'd just be like, oh, here's another, let's repackage Pac-Man again in here.
I did like in Ms. Pac-Man, you have the option of either having the screen scroll, because it was a vertical screen in the arcade. But we all know the GBA was like a landscape. It was like the first portable console that had like a landscape, it wasn't a square, whatever you want to call that. 16 by 9 or whatever they call it.
Sure.
So, in order to compensate for that, you could either have the screen scroll, or you could make it smaller. So I thought that was kind of cool, like on Ms. Pac-Man you had the option of the 2 different screen sizes. Because you could scroll and get a really nice, like, close-up view of what was happening in the action, but you couldn't see the whole playing field. Whereas in the original arcade, you would see the whole playing field at once. So, in order to do that, you had to just shrink the whole thing, and then everything shrunk, but the game was still fully playable. So I think this is a great example of like giving people options for the interface. Like that it happened where on a portable game console you could change the screen size.
For sure. I was playing mine through a 20-inch TV, so I was able to, and I played it with where you saw the whole maze, but I'm wondering how small the maze would be on the actual screen of the Game Boy Advance. Like if you chose to not do the scrolling version.
Well, there's a lot of letterboxing for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's letterbox on both sides, so you're only getting like a third of the Game Boy Advance screen, so that's pretty tiny. I would understand that that's probably the reason that they gave you the option to do scrolling or full screen, because I was playing it on my 20-inch CRT TV, and it looked fine to me, but I didn't try playing it on the actual system, so I would expect, since it does the side letterboxing, and you only get like a third of the screen, it might be hard to see where you're at in the maze. So I understand why they give you the other option.
This is a 2.9-inch screen. Was the size of the Game Boy Advance screen.
Yeah, it's small. So, and if you want to see the details of Miss Pac-Man and her bow tie and all that, her hair bow, you would have to put it in scrolling. But yeah, I guess it's a way maybe it was a way to bring in those people who played video games in 1982, the Billy Mitchells of that era, who want to bring them in to play a Game Boy Advance. So maybe that's why they had the Namco Museum on there. You said you owned Rayman, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of that game? We'll just move on to that one next. I was actually impressed with that one. I gave that one a thumbs up.
I do too, man. It was fun. I never played all the way through it, but it was a very pretty game. The sprites were huge.
Yeah, really large sprites is what I put on there. Because Rayman takes up like half the screen pretty much.
Yeah. This was a PS1 game that was converted. I think it had since been on several consoles, but a really solid Game Boy Advance port.
I mean, I thought the Game Boy Advance port was I thought it was built from the ground up. I mean, because it looked like it was made for Game Boy Advance. I mean, Rayman 2 had already been released on 64 at this time, which was a port of the PS1 game, which was a fully 3D game, which was different. I'm pretty sure that this was made especially for the Game Boy Advance.
But that was Ubisoft showing some support for a new system, which they've always done with Nintendo.
Yeah.
They've done it since the Game Boy Advance, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you can tell that they took inspiration from that Rayman game that was on PlayStation 1 and 64 and basically made it playable for Game Boy. So they basically made it into a 2D game, and I figured they made the sprites so huge because of the screen size and all that. But yeah, it's a very, very bright game. It basically takes one thing and turns it into a 2D game. So it was fun, and for what it was, I enjoyed it. It's very charming. I felt like some of the levels were like super duper long though, and I got lost in a lot of them. Like there were some of them that were just like, man, will this level ever end? And there was like 6 or 7 parts to it. So there were some that were like pretty big, but it was really playable, and I understand like, people enjoying it.
I remember it reminding me a little bit of Sonic and like the whole like, it's a very vertical sort of thing. Like you have to go up high.
Oh yeah, some of them are. But yeah.
To find all the locked up Jinjos or whatever they're called.
The Lum-Lums?
Yeah, the Lum-Lums.
I think they're just called Lums actually. I think it's just one Lum. But yeah, you find them and they're in cages. And you upgrade your punching power like as you go through the game. So you get little upgrades and stuff, and you have to go through like the first level without even having a punch power, which is interesting. And then later you get to build like some sort of flower thing that you can jump off of. But yeah, there was so much variety to the different levels that I could see myself playing through the rest of it now that I bought it on sale for $5. So it's one I would return to. At the same place, I also bought a Pitfall, which is a game that I would not return to. But it has a similar thing. Did you ever play Pitfall for Super Nintendo? Did you ever get into any of those?
I sure did, man. This is my time to shine. I played through that game all the way on Super Nintendo.
Oh, did you play the Game Boy Advance one then?
No, but when it first came out on Super Nintendo in '94, we rented it and we played it a lot, and then we decided we liked it enough that we bought the game. And we as a family, we all basically beat that. My dad beat it, my brother and me both beat it. Because I had a lot of nostalgia for Pitfall. Back in the day, when I was like a little kid, my cousin, Missy, would babysit me and I'd like stay at her house, and like I always remember like I'd play Pitfall on her TV and then she'd say, okay, you have to stop playing Pitfall because MASH is going to be on. Then we'd watch MASH.
Yeah.
So like Pitfall and MASH are like synonymous for me like growing up. So Pitfall was always like a game I remembered playing as a kid that reminded me of Mario Brothers, which I played later. Mario, I think, took some cues from Pitfall.
Oh, and, sure. Well, yeah, Pitfall was old Atari stuff, jumping over.
David Crane, man. David Crane. But, so the whole Pitfall game is in Mayan Adventure, which is cool. It was a little secret that I remember finding out how to get to through like a video game magazine I read. I think it was EGM. Told me how to get to that, which on a certain level you have to go to a certain spot and you can like play through the original Pitfall game. So yeah, I played through this. It's a hard game. It's cheap. It's cheap as fuck a lot of the time, but I liked it on the Super Nintendo. I never played on the Game Boy Advance. But as far as I can tell from what I've read, it was a direct port.
Yeah, I was going to ask you like how close it was because I never really played the Super Nintendo one. I found it weird. The Game Boy Advance one has no music in it. Was there no music in the Super Nintendo game?
There was music, so yeah. That is a good point.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe they had to do that because of like, I don't know, however they had to transfer it. But yeah, there was no music and I thought the sound effects sounded weird. I mean, I understand, like I said before, the audio for the Game Boy Advance is not as good as the Super Nintendo. We talked about that before, like with you having the Final Fantasy games on there and how people have made ones that have better soundtracks now because the soundtracks on there are not as good as the Super Nintendo ones, quality-wise. But yeah, I played it for a little bit. I couldn't beat the first boss. I got stuck on whatever I forget what it was. It was like a tiger or something, like whatever the first boss is on that. I couldn't beat it, even though I threw like multiple seeds or whatever at them that you throw out of your bag. But yeah, I couldn't really get into it, and I haven't really been into any of the Pitfall games before, so that one didn't really hook me. And it kind of like, it felt sort of empty without music either. Does the original Pitfall, does it show your life meter as the form of a crocodile like eating you? And it gets closer to you like every time you get hit?
You mean the one on Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, okay. Cause I thought that was an interesting thing. Cause, there was another game on here that did that too, where like your life.
The whole game, Pitfall, the Mayan Adventure, you're the son of the guy from Pitfall.
Oh, and you're going to find him?
And you're trying to rescue your dad, which,
oh, okay.
Yeah, there's not that surprising of a plot twist at the end when you rescue your dad. It's pretty hilarious, but, yeah, I played all the way through the end of this game, and it was hard, and we just played the shit out of it. There are passwords so you can get to certain levels in the Super Nintendo version, so, you know, you weren't completely lost, like you didn't have to play it all through in one sitting, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I might be wrong. You might have had to, but...
I think there's some sort of saving in this one, maybe. I don't know, I didn't really look, but I think you can actually save on the Game Boy Advance cart. Because I think other people had saves on there when I got it. I know Rayman had a save in it. It has a save battery.
I have every intention of eventually getting this game on Game Boy Advance, which...
You can have my copy if you want it.
Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it later, but I've got some plans for Game Boy Advance for the future.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want a copy of it, you can have my copy of it because I probably won't play it anymore. But
wow,
yeah,
okay, well, I'll just take it.
I had a hard time getting into it, but but then again, I couldn't really get into Pitfall, so that was a no for me on the pick on that one. But that's possible yes for you on the.
Well, the music being gone is kind of important because the music was really cool. I thought the music is very nostalgic for me. It's a very I don't know how to describe it. It's synthy, but it's kind of like farty synth. I don't know how to say it.
like the game, like the Genesis.
Like that's kind of the way the music is. Okay. It sounds really cool the way they do it.
Sure. Yeah,
I can describe it.
Yeah, there's like music when you start it, like in the title, but then when you get in the actual gameplay, there's no music. I mean, there's like some jungle noises, like you'll hear like chirps of birds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you won't.
And that was in the original. And as far as like the sound effects, those are always kind of off. Like when you would hit somebody, be really loud. Like that was in the Super Nintendo version as well.
Yeah, the sound effects are weird. Like whenever you climb a vine, and like when you spin down it goes like that. It makes like weird whip sounds. That I think is the same sound as when you whip your bag at somebody.
Yep.
I also found it weird that you can change the controls around, but it's automatically set as jumping B and not A. Was that like that on the Super Nintendo too?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Because it was automatically set up. You can go into the options and switch them around, but it was automatically set for it being B to jump, which is strange. Which actually, Earthworm Jim is like that too, where B is jump and not A, which weirdly enough. But speaking of a game that does have A as a jump, let's talk about Super Mario Advance real quick. Well, not real quick, for however long. Super Mario Advance, the game that brought about the confusion of numbers of Mario games for Game Boy, which we've talked about
this is where it all started.
Again. This is when it started. I thought for me, this was an ultimate letdown because, not because of like the quality of the game. The game's fine. I really wanted Super Mario World to be a launch for Game Boy Advance, and I was really bummed that it wasn't. And I felt it was really weird to do like a 16-bit version of Super Mario Brothers 2. Like I felt like that was just kind of a out of nowhere idea. Like it was like, who wanted that? And giving everybody voices now. So now they all kind of grunt and whatever when they pick shit up. I don't know. Do you like that game
I would
at all?
agree with you. Like we wanted an original Mario game for the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, which we never got.
We never got one. We never got an original
There
Zelda
was
either.
never an original Mario game for the Game Boy Advance. We didn't see a new original Mario game.
Platformer.
Yes.
Platformer-wise. I mean, we got Mario and Luigi, which was an RPG.
But I mean, so portable style, though. I mean,
yeah. No, you didn't get a new Mario game, which was really weird. Like we wouldn't get one until New Super Mario Brothers on DS.
2005 or 2006.
It was way down the road. It was probably, I'm going to guess 6, but yeah, it was strange that, well, I guess like Super Mario Brothers 1 had just been re-released as Super Mario Brothers Deluxe on Game Boy Color. So I guess it would make sense to make 2 after that.
It clearly made sense. Like, it made sense, but it was still like really disappointing, like you're saying, because we all know this isn't a real Mario game.
Well, yeah, it's a Doki Doki Panic. So it's not quite a real Mario game, but it was just a bizarre, I don't know, it boggled my mind like why that would be their presentation of Mario for Game Boy Advance when it started. Just like, here's Mario 2 with better graphics and some extra stuff.
They did add extra stuff. I mean,
there's some extra
sprite
bosses.
Scaling was like taken to like the extreme in it. Like, you know, to show all the sprite scaling effects that the Game Boy Advance could do. There'd randomly be giant enemies, or like you'd pull something out of the ground and it would be a bad guy, not just a vegetable.
Yeah, or there are also giant vegetables as well that you pulled out. And there was different, like if you stepped on something, it would like have a big guy that came out of it and it would like come up. And of course, this was also the beginning of putting Mario Brothers on every Mario release.
Yep.
You know, so you could play Mario Brothers against everyone. Even Mario and Luigi, Superstar Saga was on there, and like Yoshi's Island, and like all those other ones. Because you would think that since Super Mario Advance 1 was Super Mario Bros. 2, you would think that Super Mario Advance 2 would be Super Mario Bros. 3. But no, Super Mario Advance 2 was Super Mario World.
Super Mario World.
And then Super Mario Advance 3 was Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, and then Super Mario Advance 4 is Super Mario 3. It had all that confusion after that. It's weird that they just didn't call it Mario 2 Advance or something like that instead of like calling it Super Mario Advance and a number. But I have
You know, it's strange. At least they stopped after that naming things confusing, things.
Yeah.
After Game Boy Advance. Like, they didn't release anything that was like new Nintendo 3DS, new Nintendo 3DS XL.
Well, they released systems like that, but at least when they did New Super Mario Brothers, there was New Super Mario Brothers 1 and New Super Mario Brothers 2 on DS and 3DS, I guess.
And then there's New Super Mario Brothers Wii, New Super Mario Brothers Wii U.
Yeah, I guess they're still doing that. But it's not as confusing as Mario Advance, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3.
Well, this is when they really started digging
with Becky.
Back catalog. With Becky.
Yeah.
This is when they really started digging into their back catalog and be like, all right, let's just re-release everything, because we've got like a bunch of kids that never played the Super Nintendo that are getting a Game Boy Advance for Christmas, or, whatever.
It's weird the way so like Mario and Zelda, you didn't get any new like Mario, new Legend of Zelda. You got re-releases of the Super Nintendo games. You got a re-release of Super Mario World and Super Mario World 2.
Minish Cap.
Oh yeah, no, Minish Cap, you're right. Forgot Minish Cap. So yeah, Minish Cap was on there. But I was gonna say so we got these re-releases of this, but we never got a re-release of Super Metroid on there.
Nope.
Which is weird. But we did get one like remake Metroid games on there, which was cool. But yeah, I don't know. The Super Mario Advance, I have it on Virtual Console, on Wii U Virtual Console. So I played around with it for a while, but I'm not a huge fan of Super Mario Bros. 2. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I just never really got into it. So this one didn't really hook me. It's kind of a no buy for me, but I understand that people that like Mario 2 would want to play it. It looks pretty. I've
been playing it on my NES Classic. Like, I have a file going on that.
Yeah,
I have been playing it.
That one's gruntless, so it's less annoying. But yeah, it's okay. It just wasn't really what I wanted at the time. But speaking of other games that I didn't want at the time, I played Army Man Advance and Ready to Rumble Advance, and both of those games I think were not very good. Especially Ready to Rumble. I think that game ended up getting a 3 from IGN, a 3 out of 10, and it really sucks. Like, I thought that maybe my emulator was not working properly, but then I looked at the review and they said that the controls just don't work on the game. So that one was.
But you could beat Michael Jackson in it.
Yeah, apparently you can unlock Michael Jackson, but I couldn't get past the first fight because I was having a hard time with the controls, and I basically got beat every time. And like Ready to Rumble is already a pretty mediocre game for like PlayStation and 64. So making it into a portable makes it more mediocre.
It was a launch title for the PS2, Ready to Rumble 2.
Oh yeah. It was on Dreamcast also. As far as I got, there was a Dreamcast version of it. But I don't think any of the versions of it were actually very good. They were all mediocre. So a smaller version of it made it even more mediocre. Yeah, well.
It was like the NBA Jam of boxing games.
Yeah, but it just never really worked, I think, on any level. So that one was definitely a no for me. We can go through that one pretty quickly. But I did play it, and there was no multiplayer, there's no hookup. I mean, I did play it for what it was. Rayman Advance I thought looked like an NES game, and apparently some people like it. I couldn't get through the first level. There's like no health. This is another like one button game where you just walk around and hit A to shoot people. I never got into any of the Rayman games, but I guess there was like 4 or 5 of them on 64, so I understand why they carried it on to Game Boy Advance. And I think they ended up making like 3 or 4 sequels to this game also, so it just kept going. So people like this one enough, but I thought that the graphics looked really simple on it, and the animation was so-so, and it was really hard to win, and there was no health or anything like that. So pass on that one. Let's see, what else do we have left? Oh yeah.
Looking at it, it kind of actually reminded me a little bit of a Hotline Miami.
Oh, but Hotline Miami's cool. I like
yeah,
that
but
game.
It reminded me a little bit of that sort of layout, like how it works.
Oh, because it's kind of Hotline Miami is like is like a shooter, but it's like more strategic. And I guess you could be more strategic in Army Man also, but I don't think it's as strategic as Hotline.
It's all laid out where you're going around and like there's people firing on you from off screen and stuff like.
Yeah,
it did remind me of that a little.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about Hotline Miami on there, but I guess I could see the similarities. One game that I thought was really, really cool though was Chu Chu Rocket. Have you played that game?
No, but I watched videos of it. And I remember Chu Chu Rocket just because of the weird name. Like, what the fuck is Chu Chu Rocket?
Well, supposedly Chu Chu is means like mouse in Japanese. Like we looked it up earlier because, because there's little characters in Zelda called Chu Chus, like the big guys.
And then there's Bomb Chus.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Bomb Chus also. Well, the Bomb Chus look like mice, so I guess that makes sense. But the Chu Chus, the big ball Chu Chus, that doesn't make sense, like for that being the name. But anyway, Chu Chu Rocket is like a puzzle game of sorts where you basically direct this group of mice into these holes, and then the rockets, then they shoot off in a rocket. And later, you have to deal with cats as well, which you have to and you place like a block on a maze type thing that'll make them go a certain way. It's like up, down, left, right, whatever. And there's certain levels where you'll use those to redirect the cats in different ways also. But I had a lot of fun with it. I played through like the first 15 levels or so on there. I thought it was a really cool game. It's a game that I really wish
you pretty much lay like all your shit down at the beginning and then just hit play, right?
Yeah.
Kind of how it works.
Yeah, you lay a couple blocks down and then you hit play, and you can actually hit play twice and they'll go quicker to see where they're going. But yeah, what I ended up doing is I would just when the level started, I would just hit play at the beginning to see where they were going to go, and then kind of try to figure out where I would put the blocks after that. But yeah.
Is there a penalty for being able to do it right, like initially? Does it do a high score sort of thing if you can solve it your first try or anything like that?
Not that I know of, not that I noticed. It was just mostly just go to the next thing. But what's really cool is there's like a 4-player mode on there that you can do where you're all like mice running around, and you can, put little blocks around to try to redirect your, the guys that you're playing against, which is really cool. There's a 4-player link mode on there. You can also build your own mazes. You can draw your own characters. There's all this cool extra stuff that's on there aside from the robust just puzzle mode on it. I mean, that one was a definite for me. If I was buying games, it's always good to have, I always have a checklist of games that I want to have for a system. When I get a new system, it's I want a good fighting game. I want a good puzzle game. I want a good RPG.
This is
or a good adventure
Dreamcast game originally, right?
Well, it was I know it's a Sega game. It was probably on Dreamcast, I'm sure. Yeah, I feel like it was on that. I know it was made by Sega, and it was probably a port of that, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. If I found it cheap somewhere, I'd totally get it. I really wish it was on Virtual Console. I don't know why it isn't. I mean, it's a Sega game. They own it, right? And Sega's still releasing stuff for Nintendo. I mean, I guess there hasn't been any Genesis games for the Wii U, but there has been Genesis games for 3DS, like a lot of them. So, I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's something I'd really like to see released on Virtual Console in the future, because it's a really fun game. It's a definite yes, thumbs up for me. Plenty of fun stuff to do on it, and I totally recommend playing it if you haven't played it. Speaking of Sega, let's go into Pinobee, Wings of Adventure. Did you watch any of that stuff?
I don't understand this game. His head gets big.
Yeah, I can explain.
The big head kind of throws me off.
Yeah, the big head is really weird. Basically what happens is, this was made by people who made Sonic the Hedgehog. So it came from kind of that same development, and it feels a lot like a Sonic game, except now you can sort of fly for a minute. It's another like one button game. It's just like moving and hitting A, and you get these upgrades as you go through it, and you get to fly like, it's like getting a double jump almost. Like you can jump and then double jump again, and then you'll get to double jump again after that, and then double jump again after that, like flying. And when you get to the end of your double jumps is when your head gets big. So I guess that's supposed to kind of let you know, like when you're out of the extra like fly boosts or whatever. Cause you do get like a lot more as you go through the game. Like I played through the first like 15 levels or so of the game, and I played through a couple bosses. And that's I guess that's why the head thing is there, because when I first started playing it and his head kept getting big, I'm like, wow, this is really weird. Like, why is that on there? But then when I got to where I got the upgraded jumping, it kind of made sense. It's like, okay, you do that when you run out of like an extra jump, his head gets big.
Well, I've watched a couple of playthroughs of the game, not all the way through, and then I've seen a few people say it's a hidden gem sort of thing.
Yeah, some people like it.
I'll see people play it and like they just ignore the giant head. So I kind of realized like maybe the giant head thing is like something you just phase out eventually. But so it's just a visual cue that you're on your final jump, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's letting you know that you can't jump again, or that you can't do the zip, or whatever you call it. I say, I gave it a good buy if like you were looking for a 2D platformer type game, because I guess you got that in Rayman, they're similar. But I mean, it's solid for that type of thing. If you're looking for something aside from like Rayman or Mario Advance, it's decent. I mean, it's okay.
And if you like your head getting giant.
Yeah, well, they wanted to show that giant, sprite expansion, right? But yeah, when you get farther in the game, you really don't see the head blow up as much, so it won't really bother you. Yeah, if that's what's bothering you, when you get to later in the game, it'll get better. What else do we got? Super Dodgeball. I played that game. I never really got into those games that much. It was fun for what I played. I played like 3 or 4 matches.
That was an NES game originally, right?
It was an NES game originally. And they decided to make another one for the Game Boy Advance, which has better graphics, and you have like super throws in this one.
Did not use the same sprites.
No, not the same sprites. The sprites look much better, actually. It looks good. I mean, the game looks good. There's kind of like a, sort of like an RPG-ish thing in it. I don't know if you can actually upgrade your characters, but, you go from like one place to another, and it's about your conquest to become the best Super Dodgeball character. But it's fun. I mean, I had fun with just catching the ball and throwing it into the other people. It wasn't a game I really got into, but I guess if anybody who liked the NES game, I'd say totally pick it up for Game Boy Advance, for sure.
What I read was that they got a license for the game, but they didn't get a license for, like, the sprites. That's why they had to change the sprites.
Oh. I thought...
The images used in the actual game were, like, copyrighted separately. Because it was the same people that made, like, River City Ransom.
Yeah, so it looks like... And yeah, they kind of look like Double Dragon also. Like the same sort of like with the big heads and the like round fists, right?
I think it was Atlas, right, that made that.
Oh, I don't know. Atlas does
It was Atlas, so they did,
okay.
They did River City Ransom. So they had like a certain style of character design that they used. And when this game was made, they started development once they got a license for the game, but before they got a license for the character design. So they had to change the sprites when they remade it.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, well, I was saying that the sprites look different because they look better, but you're right, it doesn't have the design that you'd see from like River City Ransom with those like bigger heads and like the round fists and all that. And I did notice that it looked different, but I didn't know that it was that deep as far as like why it looked different. I only played it a little bit, so it's kind of like, I figured it wouldn't be one that we talk a whole lot about, but it's okay. I mean, it's a decent buy if you like this type of games. Well, that's why the sprites look different. Yeah. And there you go. That's why the sprites look different. Yeah, for sure. Did you look into anything on Fire Pro Wrestling, which is a game I said I got pushed into getting from John? Apparently, I had the hardest time getting into it when I had it, and I can't get into it again this time. But apparently it's like a very technical wrestling game. Like it doesn't involve the quick pushing of buttons or anything like that. And that's why a lot of people have a hard time getting into it. But then again, there's like no training mode on there, like no tutorial. So I don't know how to play it. I suck at it. I couldn't win at all. I read a review on IGN. They said it was an incredibly deep wrestling game, but I don't know. I didn't look at any sort of like strategy guides about it. I guess you'd have to read up to figure out how to play it, but I couldn't really figure out how to play it. So, 2 more left. I know it's a long list. It's like 17 games, but the last 2 games were like the 2 that I still have in cartridge form, that I didn't actually have to buy new versions of. And they were, of course, F-Zero and Castlevania Circle of the Moon. I covered both of those last. I played Castlevania Circle of the Moon last, actually, because I figured that would be the one that I just want to spend the most time with. I actually like it a lot better than I did when it came out. The main problem I had with it when it came out, like we were saying before, was the Game Boy wasn't backlit, so it was really hard to see the game. It was a very dark game. So if you didn't have a good light for your Game Boy, it was very difficult to play. And also like the way the system works with the cards. I basically had, like, I was playing the game and I got a couple cards and I died and I came back and I never got those cards again because they're very random the way they drop. All the cards are super rare. Yeah, they all randomly drop. Like, I remember playing the game and, like, lending it to you and you playing it, and, like, I, like, would look at your file and you had completely different cards that I did because you would have, whoever played it would have different cards because they were, like, super random and super rare, I guess. I mean, I played the game, like, I played through, like, 2 bosses and I only got, like, maybe 2 cards. I had, like, 4 cards and 1 saved, but I died and lost 2 of the cards, so I ended up with only 2 at the end. But it was the beginning of greatness for Castlevania, though, because that's what brought, what was it? Was it Harmony of Dissonance? Was that the one before? Yeah, it was Harmony of Dissonance, and then it was Area of Sorrow, which Area of Sorrow was like the one that I felt like that was like the pinnacle. That was like the best one out of all of them. But Harmony of Dissonance was good too. It was better, but, I will say, back in the day, it was a couple years ago when I finally bought a Wii U, I was super disappointed when I found out, you couldn't get Game Boy Advance games on the 3DS. Yeah. Which I was like, well, there were ambassador games that were Game Boy Advance games, so I was really disappointed, but when they released Game Boy Advance games on the Wii U, I was like, well, fuck it. Like, I want to play these games. I want a Wii U already. Like, I already knew I wanted a Wii U. Yeah. I'm like, I can play these games on the gamepad, like, it's the big Game Boy Advance, which is, the gamepad works really well as a giant Game Boy Advance for all those VC titles. No, I love that. I love the way the ones that they have on there. I wish they had more. But yeah, I totally felt the same way as you did. Like, I bought a 3DS, and I expected that those ambassador games would be available to buy. But no, they're not. They were only available to the ambassadors. Mm-hmm. And I was really bummed because I wanted to play all the Game Boy Advance games on 3DS because it makes sense to be able to play portable games on a portable system, right? But then they ended up only being on Wii U. But the great thing was, you get a Wii U, now you can play the Castlevania games. Because they did put all 3 of them on there. Out, at the same time. Yeah, I think they came out. Yeah, I think they came out like on the same week or something like that. They did. Yeah. And I bought all 3 of them, man. And I have all 3. And I played through Dissonance and Aria of Sorrow. I have not played all the way through Circle of Moon. I still haven't played all the way through that game. Yeah. How far? So much harder by comparison. It is. How far did you get in it? I'm in a big zombie dragon that kicks my ass. Oh yeah. The last thing that I did on this one was like the Reaper, the guy with the hood, which is only like the second boss, so I didn't play for that long. But I was enjoying it for the most part. But yeah, it is difficult. Like, I probably died like 6 times before I got there. And I know it, I mean, I never finished the game all the way. Like, even though, like, yeah, I remember trying to play it on Game Boy Advance SP when I got that so I could see all the stuff in the background. But I'm going to try to, I don't know, I'll probably play it some more, see how far I can get in it. But I remember it being incredibly difficult, and I remember getting stuck on bosses and all that. But it's
a hard game.
Yeah, I was really excited when it came out as a Game Boy Advance launch title because, that was the future of Castlevania, and I was like really excited to play a game like that because it kind of came right on the heels of Symphony of the Night, right? Which I didn't play, but everybody loved, like you loved it, you talked about it, and it was good that they were making games like this, and then Rondo of Blood, which I didn't even know about, came out before that. But yeah, it was cool that they were starting to do these Metroidvania type things. Well, actual Castlevania games that are like Metroid on Game Boy, and they made 3 of them and then continued to make them on DS, and it was a glory day that we could play all this great stuff.
It was, man, and Circle of the Moon is a fantastic game. No matter what, like if you get stuck in that game, you can grind.
Yeah, you can
hold and grind and save and grind and save.
You can hold the B button in some areas and just go in and just gain experience without doing anything. You can tape your button down and just let it go for leave it charged in with a GBA SP and just let him throw that whip around for like hours if you have the ability to do that. Which I always thought about doing, like some of the levels where the Medusa heads like fly at you, just like hold the B button down and just let it, because they'll just keep coming back. Like you can do it forever.
Yeah. The ghosts, like the levels where the ghosts are spawning, are the best spots to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if you actually tried that.
They're not like the Medusas, but I always do it with the ghosts.
Oh, okay, I always thought about doing
Yes, I did tape down my button.
Yeah.
With Scotch tape and a rolled up piece of paper, like a rolled up piece of notebook paper.
Yeah, I was wondering how you would do it. Like, I was thinking about maybe like with pennies or something, or I don't know.
You can use hair ties and pennies or nickels, or like if you roll up a piece of paper, like you're making a spitball, like you would shoot with a rubber band.
Yeah, sure. And it probably has to be pretty tight. Like the band has to be pretty tight. Yeah, maybe I should try that sometime.
But man, Circle of the Moon was a fantastic intro to, like, when it came to Game Boy Advance, ultimately that was the game I gravitated towards the most.
Oh yeah, like, that was the selling point.
This is a new Symphony of the Night type of game. Completely portable, hard as fuck to see. But if you're out in direct sunlight, which encouraged me to be out in the sunlight.
Yeah, like Boktai.
Yeah. Like I would actually be outside when I was in college. Like when this game came out, I would go outside
so you could see it better
and sit down in the courtyard with the sunlight directly on top of me, and so I could play the game. And I'm playing this like dark gothic castle game about Dracula in the direct sunlight because that was the only way I could see it.
Yeah. And it should help you kill Dracula then, since the direct sunlight is coming on it.
Should have.
Yeah, it didn't. Probably not. It should. No, it's a cool game, and I'm hoping to play it more. It was a major selling point for me in the Game Boy Advance, and I think that's why I got the Game Boy Advance as soon as I did, was because of that, and I was really excited about a new Castlevania game. Because before that, in Nintendo World, like all there had been was the 64 ones, which, some people hated. I thought the first one was okay, but it wasn't that. And then I finally had that, RPG Metroid type game, where you could go around and gain levels and all that. And the other, let's do the last one real quick. F-Zero I was super excited about just because it had the look of the Super Nintendo game. It was all like Mode 7 and all that. And I was originally kind of disappointed with it because it didn't control exactly the same as the original F-Zero, but I played through all of it today. Like I went through all the races, and I just played it differently, and I enjoyed it more. Like instead of like braking on everything, you kind of just have to tap the accelerator. But it does play a lot like the original game. You just have to play it differently. But that game is cool. I mean, I kind of was a little, I don't know, I was a little like jaded about it because it wasn't exactly like the original F-Zero like I wanted it to be. But playing it again, I had fun with it.
There were 2 F-Zero games on the Game Boy Advance.
There were. F-Zero GP Legend was the last F-Zero game as well. The one that came out later, which was based on the F-Zero anime, which I didn't like that one very much either when it came out, so maybe I should try playing it again and play it the same way as I did Maximum Velocity. Maybe I'll get it better. Those are both available on Virtual Console. I have a cartridge version of both of them also, so maybe I'll just play it on my Game Boy player, which was how I played most of these. Well, how I played all the ones that had cartridge, I played it through the GameCube. But yeah, I like that one. I give it a thumbs up for a good buy. I did the same thing for Castlevania, got a thumbs up as well.
Hell yeah, man!
If I was
way thumbs up.
Yeah. If I was to go back in time and have enough money to buy 5 games from the original lineup, I would get Castlevania, Chu Chu Rocket, I would get Konami Crazy Racers and Rayman, and what should I get for a 5th one? I don't know, probably Mario. Probably Tony Hawk, I guess. No, not Mario Advance. I guess Tony Hawk. But yeah, there's those three new ones that I didn't know were great that I found out on my playthrough was Chu Chu Rayman and Konami Crazy Racers. Were 3 gems that I didn't know about that are very cool. But yeah, that concludes our very long list of Game Boy Advance titles. Hopefully you were able to stay awake through all of it. We've been your hosts.
Oh wait, you want to close it out?
Yeah, I was going to close it out. You don't want to close it out?
Well, no, I wanted to talk about the future of my Game Boy Advance, because I'm a huge fan of the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, hold up. We're not closing out yet. Tell us about your Game Boy Advance future.
Alright, man, well, you might know, the Game Boy Advance is my favorite system of all time.
Yeah.
It's more favored than the GameCube, unfortunately. I know you love the GameCube, but I think I love the Game Boy Advance more. Well, what's great about the Game Boy Advance at this point in history is that it's super moddable. You can get a hold of a Game Boy Advance, take the motherboard out of it, and change the screen out, and change the body. You can do a lot of shit with it. It's really fun. And I've been playing around with that a little bit. So, my ultimate Game Boy Advance is going to be taking an original Game Boy Advance with that solid body before the SP. I'm going to put the guts of an AGS 101 in it.
What's an AGS 101?
An AGS 101 is the SP that was brighter.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, the final one with the really good screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That had the same brightness as the original fat brick DS. It had the same brightness screen.
Yeah.
I want to take an original Game Boy Advance, put the AGS 101 screens in it, and then I'm going to get a hold of this thing called an EverDrive. Have you heard of an EverDrive?
It's basically a cartridge that has like everything on it, right? Or has like 100 games or whatever. Yeah, so then you have the ultimate Game Boy with everything available.
The Game Boy Advance EverDrive came out within the past 6 months, and basically you get the device, but you have to tear apart a game and then splice. You have to put the EverDrive into an old Game Boy Advance game shell.
Oh, okay. But you can't buy one that's already in a shell. You have to like do it yourself.
You can, but you have to spend a bunch of money extra. But yeah, so that's my goal.
Yeah, you should do that. That sounds cool. You have the ultimate Game Boy.
I don't think I communicated it well this time, but I think in a lot of previous episodes I've said, the Game Boy Advance, in my opinion, is the best portable system that ever came out, especially with the later releases with the SP and the clamshell design. So.
Yeah,
I like the ultimate SP for me, though, is not the clamshell. It's the original Game Boy Advance body with a backlit screen.
Yeah, I wanted to get a Game Boy Micro, but those are pretty expensive now. So I thought that'd be cool to carry because of how small they are. You can just carry them around in your pocket.
Well, combined with the EverDrive, that would be perfect.
Yeah, well, the Game Boy Micros have the same brightness as the original DS also, and the DS Fat.
Yep.
So, but those are kind of expensive now, I guess, because they're more rare. But yeah, you should totally do that. And whenever you finish that project, we'll do a video of it and show it and all that on our YouTube channel at YouTube/FingMater. We'll put it on there. But yeah, I hope that you can get that drive. We'll definitely talk about in the future. Is that good for our Game Boy Advance?
I think so.
Launch lineup episode? All right.
I think so.
Well, there you have it. We gave you the Nintendo's biggest launch lineup in history. Maybe the Switch will be bigger, maybe it won't. We'll find out. But we'll find out that next week, so make sure you tune in next week to NintenDomain. That's our podcast that you heard. We are your hosts. I'm Trey Johnson.
Jerry Mikowski.
And we'll see you next week for the Switch stuff. So, like us on iTunes and send us emails and all that. In the meantime, see you later.
Happy Switchmas.
Happy Switchmas.